the way President Donald Trump is threatening not only the world, but also his neighbor, where he has to trade $2.7 billion for U.S. every year. A lot of things go across the border. His threat, how serious we should take? Gary.
Well, I think we need to take President Trump's words very seriously, because he seems to act sometimes just out of a whim. I don't think there's a plan. Unfortunately, as Canadians, I think we've always been a good friend to the Americans, and perhaps Mr. Trump needs a good history lesson. And perhaps other than maybe the War of 1812, I think the United States has benefited from having a good neighbor like Canada. And when we talk about an undefended border, the reality is the Americans have not had to invest in protecting that border, because Canada has stood tall and stood strong and have always been a good friend of the Americans, and they know that. So to suggest that somehow Mr. Trump believes that Canada owes the U.S. something is, I think it's a complete misunderstanding of what is probably one of the more remarkable international relationships in the world. And if this guy keeps going, he's going to create a lot of havoc. And I think the real concern, and I think that's part of the reason we make it into today, talking about the need for a provincial election, there's too many unknowns, because you quite simply don't know what Mr. Trump's going to do, and every morning he gets up, you kind of have to wait, wondering what's going to come out. So at the end of the day, yeah, I think we need to be very concerned, but I think the concern is about the uncertainty. But Canada's a very strong nation, we're a very resource-rich nation, and we can stand on our own, and we don't need to be bullied by anybody. I just think Mr. Trump needs to think long and hard about the friendship that this nation has had with his country and the importance of that relationship. He doesn't seem to care, or whether it's nothing more than a negotiating tactic. That's all well and good, but it puts the whole country at ill ease. And beginning at the Prime Minister level, all through the federal government, that's all you see when you turn on the news, is the federal government and the Prime Minister and his ministers talking about their concern about what may be coming down the pipe. So it's the conversation around a lot of tables in this country, and will be, unfortunately, for 4 more years. So I think all we can do, you can't sit around and wait for it to happen. It's just, we know something's coming, we just don't know what the impact will be. But I think it's the uncertainty is the real fear.
Yeah. John, we as a Canadian, we all believe, and I also believe as an immigrant Canadian, that we are strong, as Gary said, and free. Well, no one can threat. How you take his threat?
I think that what's happened to politics in general, and Trump is a perfect example of that, is that there seems to be more animosity and denigration than I've ever seen before. It may have been funny the first time he said that Canada's the 51st state, but it's not funny when he keeps repeating that kind of stuff over and over again. Canada and the United States have been the best of friends ever since, for the last 2 centuries, etc. And the kind of antics that he is up to hurts us individually. It certainly hurts our businesses. If he ever puts through the 25% tariffs that he's going to implement, it is going to destroy not only our economy, but also the economy in the United States. And I think that what I would like to see happen is for all the provinces and the federal government to get together and present one common stand against what Trumpism is all about. I've been involved in politics for a long time, as has Gary, etc. And I have never seen a situation develop the way this one has developed over the last little while. And it isn't just with Trump, it started a little bit before that. At one time politicians used to have a certain respect for one another, and countries had a respect for one another. And now it is just, it's just horrible as to what's happening, etc. And I think that I would urge our governments, both federally and provincially, to stand up to the bully of Mr. Trump. He's not doing anybody any good, and from the little that I know about it, is that if he puts the kind of tariffs in that he's talking about, it will not only hurt the Canadian economy and Canadian people, but it will also hurt a lot of the American people and the American economy. So, stop this nonsense. Let's be good neighbors with one another. We've had some excellent working arrangements in the automotive industry and elsewhere, where the two countries have worked together, etc. and to be involved in this kind of shenanigans that he's been up to since he became president is unbecoming of a president of the United States. You know, I often think, if I could just take one further moment, you know, when Jimmy Carter became president, Ford sent him a beautiful letter, apparently, that wished him all the best in the world. What has happened to the politics of where we can disagree with one another, but we don't have to necessarily be disagreeable? And what's happening throughout the world, in Canada as well, and as well in the United States, is the animosity that has been created in politics over the last number of years, and is now accentuated even more with Trump being in power, etc. It's just horrible. People are going to get a disrespect of politicians in general. I've heard it from a number of people. You know, why would anybody want to get involved? You know, when politicians just get raked over the coals all the time, particularly when they do it to one another. Anyway, hopefully we can survive these next 4 years and get some sane leadership back in the United States.